there's various different things that can happen out of that, and it's a really uncomfortable conversation. That's why most people don't answer that question. But I'm not most people, and God is so good. And so there is no one answer to that, but I can tell you that if we're upset because we have had a loss, the first thing that happens is you go into shock. Shock is that area of like, I can't believe, like, what? You know, and you can go into shock that you lose sense of your body, you lose sense of just thinking straight. Like I've shared the story before about my brother, major car accident or whatever. He gets out, he's got glass stuck in his head and everything. The ambulance driver said, you might want to get over here. We'll help you. And he said, no, I'm fine. He was not aware of his body, and he went to walk off, and he just collapsed and passed out. Then he didn't remember anything after that. When your body goes into shock, that's how it is. But, if you found out something on the news that you didn't like, but you weren't related to it anyhow, there's still a certain amount of shock that you'll experience. Like, what? Like, there's some really stupid stuff going on right now that's like, what? And if you look at it at all, every day is what? So what happens is you'll only compound that so long where it's like, what? And then it'll start making you upset because you'll look for the answer to the what. And when you start to find that, it'll cause a grieving feeling. Like, hey, wait, what are we doing with America? Why are we the generation who has to lose stuff? Why is this getting so jacked up? And stuff like that. And so you'll grieve, even from the news. It takes a little bit of time, but it'll be a compounding thing that'll happen. So different than if, a loved one died or something like that. And so sometimes it's just time for that person to go home, and I've had people get mad at God, and their grandpa was 94, and he's like, look, how much longer do you want me to stay here? That's his attitude on it. But they still got mad at God because, he's gone. And I wasn't ready for him to go. You can have it where there's a suddenly. That's the area where we get a little bit more where we hold on to the anger toward God. And what I call, it's not a therapeutic term, it's just a term I made up that sounds like an easier way to understand the therapeutic term. And that is, suddenly is, like something suddenly happens. You did not see it coming. So this last week, we're aware of 3 people who hung themselves. Their family did not see that coming, right? You just didn't see it coming. So there's a different type of shock that you go in. It's like a suddenly, and all of a sudden adrenaline, epinephrine just goes through the roof. Your cortisol is like, and you can't think straight. It's such a shock because you're not putting any storyline to it. The storyline of Grandpa passing when he's 94 is like, Grandpa's getting older. This might be his last Christmas. I mean, we have all this preparation, even if it's not this year that he's going to pass. We kind of all know eventually he's leaving here. But when it suddenly happens, that's a shock and awe. Like, it's explosive to the brain. And the brain will then start looking for your subconscious. Your heart will start looking for what happened? What happened is the first stage, right? And then, well, who did this? Starts to move into the second stage. To go into who did this really can't go first as much because that's really looking for it. Now I'm starting to actually acknowledge what happened. That's why I'm looking for who did this. And then if it's not a who, then we'll go, well, what? Right? And so we'll get stuck in this thing, and everybody will be in that thing for whatever amount of time, depending on how your brain deciphers the situation, depending on your background, depending on your training, all kinds of different things fall into that. And so this can happen within a minute. You can go through all these different stages. You can move from the stage of shock over into like, I'm starting to accept that this really happened, and that hurts me. And I don't like pain, so now I'm mad. Now I'm sad mad. I'm scared mad. Remember, anger is a secondary emotion. So you're going to feel something, but it's going to make you mad that you would have to experience the thing that you're feeling, and you don't want to. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to feel hurt in any way or whatever, and that makes me really mad. So we can get stuck right about there. That's where most people will get stuck. And somewhere in the process, we're like, how did this happen? Why? Who? All of those different things. And then we realize and start to accept the fact they're not coming back. Or this situation really has changed. Which means whatever the situation was that changed, it changes it for me. Right? And I don't know where I'm at with that change. How do I respond? What do I do in the middle of that change? I wasn't expecting this. Right? So that's that shock part, but it'll bounce between shock and it'll come all the way down to the anger, and then it'll come back up to shock again. And then after a while, you're just not shocked. Now you're just mad. Because somewhere in there, we've cried about it so hard, we were in shock walking around. Sometimes guys don't cry as much, but they'll just be like in shock, just like walking around. It's like it took their emotions to a level they can't even process it. And how many of us know we do really dumb things during that time? Yeah. You don't drive accurately. There's just some things, it's like, because we're really at a spot. And but then when we start to accept it, the finality of like that person's gone, my car is ruined, they really did steal that from me. This is an absolute betrayal. Sometimes in relationships, for instance, we'll go in and out of that one. That's a little bit harder because, it looks like we're breaking up, but then we're not. And then it looks like we're breaking up, but then we're not. Well, then all of a sudden we're breaking up. Or are we? Right? And sometimes people do that for a year, and then something all of a sudden is final. It's like, I'm done. No, I'm done. I've had it. And then you're like, well, you haven't really had it because you said that before. But then you realize 3 weeks later, no, they've had it. And then you go into the grief of it and the shock of it and all of those different things. But we can go into shock and come out of it, go up and down during those times of threatening, like I'm leaving or I'm done or, whatever it is. That makes sense? So we're still leading up to being mad at God. Okay? We usually don't have time to be mad at him when we're in shock, because we just are not believing this is happening to begin with. How could this happen to me? And then it'll move into a different form where it's like I'm actually starting, as I go through the steps, I'm starting to actually feel something about this. Shock is like you think you're feeling everything, but there's so much adrenaline and everything, it takes you to a point where you almost can't feel. You're feeling, but you're not feeling. Like when my sister's house burnt down. My family member took out a hose. Because you're just thinking, like, well, we better put this out, right? Windows are blowing out. And I think the little garden hose is probably, you should walk away, right? But that's that shock. You don't have time at that point to be like, I'm mad at God, my house is burning down. No, it's like, we have to do something. I'm responsible. You got all these feelings going on during that time. And the feelings we have that are at high intensity when something like that happens is the feelings that we'll also grieve about later. Because those become the shoulda, coulda, woulda things. I should have known that this was going to happen. I should have seen that coming. I should have not believed the person. I should have took more classes on this. I mean, this is the time where you start to come out of it in that anger, grief time. We're mad at ourselves. Now, in teaching on anger resolution, anger has a voice. It will be heard. It's going to go out, right? On everybody around. It was you, it's this person, and if they would have never, and blah, blah, blah. It's the people who made the furnace that blew up, and they should have known better. I mean, we'll try to we'll peel that thing till we get to the middle of the onion to try to find out who's the stinkiest person here that I can blame. And then you realize by doing that, it still doesn't bring the person back, the house back, your car back, whatever it is that your loss was, the relationship back. You can blame all you want. Blame, 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 blame. And usually this is what we do. We go out like this. We machine gun. And then when that doesn't have an effect and we still feel unsafe and we begin to really grieve, who's left? We got two people. God and right here. And we'll bounce between Why didn't you? To why didn't I? Right? I should have prayed harder. I don't even know what prayed harder looks like. What does that really mean? Like I could sit here and have one little tear come down my cheek and really cry out to God for something very quietly, but do that and with full faith and get something done. Right? Might take me 30 seconds. I've seen healings come to pass out of that compassion, just boom, boom, there it is. Or should I have prayed harder, which is like what? Like you're like, I don't know. I don't know what harder looks like, but we'll say that because what it's saying is I should have been more involved. Well, the way that we're involved through prayer is by moving God's hand by faith. I'm trusting in him. I'm trusting, right? I'm putting my belief out there for him. So we have to understand that that's how that works. It isn't though, but I'm going to pray harder and then he has to do something. I've always said he's already done something 2,000 years ago. Everything he was going to do, he did on the cross. Now it's up to us to receive what he did, right? So, but we all have choices then too. I could come off the platform and just slap Katie in the face with a smile. Right? And she'd be like, she'd go into shock. Might take her a little bit to react. We're in church. There's a lot of options of what do I do and those types of things. But should we blame God for me coming off of here and slapping her? That was a choice of my will. Just like, and this has been taught by ministers and teachers and things and just situations. When we don't know how to handle grief, somehow God gets the credit for horrible things. Like, have you ever been at a funeral and you're like, God just needed another angel. I'm pretty sure he's made enough of them, and if he hasn't, he's the creator. He can just make one. Plus, we're not angels, we're humans. That's right. When we leave this body and we go to heaven, we are his sons and daughters. We're not, I'm an angel now. There's no scripture that says that we're an angel. But these are things to comfort when no one knows how to comfort. We're like, oh, yeah, so, he needed another angel. And you're like, oh, I guess so. But it doesn't comfort you, right? So many times we'll have like false teachings coming at us or things that are said that, aren't right, but we don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. And we all go, yeah, that's sad. And the grief stays with us, but our brain says, you agreed to this, right? He needed another angel, so then why are you feeling so sad? I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. Well, now you're attacking yourself. And whenever we have any of those feelings, we're mad, sad, we want the anger to stop. Anger has a voice. It's going to go out or it's going to come in. So first we display it outward, and then we realize that's not doing anything. So I probably should punish myself. Or we'll go around punishing God. I ain't talking to him. Like he's going to be up there like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? Sometimes our poor choices, like I was at a funeral and a young man was blazing drunk, right? Got in a car accident, was killed. He couldn't think straight, he couldn't whatever. Somehow God got the blame for that. He was so young. Why did he take him so young? He didn't take him. He was blazing drunk. So there's some things like that. And somebody will say, well, that person died of cancer. Well, God didn't cause the cancer. That's what the Bible says, right? It says there is one that goes around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And it's not the Lion of the tribe of Judah he's talking about. He's talking about evil, right? And evil is looking for that. We live in a wicked world, and it's a loss of innocence when we find that out. We're kind of like, this should never happen. A lot of stuff happens because we're in a wicked world, and for us to think it would never happen is off, right? And everybody, eventually in your life, you get that shock and awe moment that it's like, I can't believe this happened. How could this happen? Right on? So we take that and then we're upset with God. So it can come to the level of I'm upset with myself, I'm upset with you, and I am upset with God. That's a lot of upsetness. So if this was poison, just a little example, right? And I'm sure some of you have heard this before. This is actually healing oil, but we'll pretend it's poison. And somebody violated me. Now, violation can just mean it's an act of violence that subtracts from you. Like I can do an act of violence when you come in here, and the music stops and I just go, I violated you. I'm really trying to take something from you. What am I trying to take? How you feel about yourself. I'm about to change how you feel, right? Just by directing, just with a dirty look, just with a crusty. That's what we call them, crusties. Like, that was a crusty, right? And where you start to question yourself, you're not even sure. So that's a violation. So when there's a violation, there's a betrayal. And when there's a betrayal, because see, you came in here trusting, and now the person speaking just did that crusty, which means now I feel betrayed about the whole class. I don't even know if I should be here. Like I trusted to show up here. See, so then you feel violated, right? And if we do the outward, and that doesn't do anything, and then we attack ourselves, and that doesn't do anything, and then somehow it'll go to God or bounce between the two of us. It's like taking poison, right? But I'm going to make you pay. You hurt me, so let me... See that? There, I'm not forgiving you. And I'm walking around with poison inside of me, and you're running around scot-free. But somehow if I punish myself, that's the anger, then somehow everyone's supposed to go, don't do that. And we're all going to run after you and say, no, we love you. And how many of you know that usually doesn't happen? We're just walking around chugging poison, which is unforgiveness. I'm not forgiving that person. I'm not forgiving God. He wrecked my life. Well, that's against his character. He's not a man that he can lie. If you know what the Word of God says, he doesn't roll like that. But we are agents of free will. Like I said, I could step off of here and slap her one, do a little box kick, something. And then you could say, why did God let that happen? Because he created us free will agents. So I can leave you, I can talk trash to you, but I can also encourage you, build you up. It's a choice of my will. I'm either going to fall in the sin category or the righteousness category in the way that I treat you. And it's my choice. The same way people say, if God's a God of love, why does he send people to hell? And that's not his game plan. He provided a way so that you could secure your salvation to know that you know that you know you're going to heaven. Through the Word of God. And he didn't do that and then just wait trying to trick those few people he really wants to send to hell. No, we just choose not to believe in what he gave us. If we make that choice, then it's our choice to go there. So it's the same kind of thing. David went through a lot in Psalms, and a lot of times he wrote it out. Psalms is actually like a song. He says, "O Lord, how my enemies have increased." This is in Psalms 3. "Many are rising up against me." Ever feel like that? "Many are saying of me, there's no help, no salvation for him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me." So everything looks opposite than what he knows about God. "You, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and my honor, and the one who lifts my head." So he's not the one who causes depression. He's not the one who leaves you in tears. He's the one who'll say, hey, I got you. But our childlike way of him having us means nothing bad will ever happen. If you truly were a good father, then nothing bad will ever happen. He'd have to take us out of this world, wouldn't he? Because it's a wicked place. Plus, he said to his disciples, which is like talking to us, in this world there will be trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world, which means you can too. Right? "But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and my honor, and the one who lifts my head. With my voice I was crying to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept safely. I awakened, for the Lord sustains me. I will not be intimidated or afraid of 10,000 who have set themselves against me all around." He didn't say, I will not be intimidated by the neighbor man. He just had a few more people than the neighbor man, right? 10,000s, right? Because he had ticked a few people off just doing the will of God, trying to build the temple, do all that. And, yeah, I will not be intimidated or afraid of the 10,000s who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me. Now, see, he's praying. Oh, my God. And then he goes on and talks about how he's going to take care of the enemy. See, he had a trust. But what did even though David screwed up just like the rest of us in a certain area of his life, God said of David, he's a man after my own heart. His heart is hot after me, right? So now, what gives us permission to drink the poison and feel justified and suffer like we're punishing ourselves because we're mad. Anger says, I want something to stop and I can't get it to stop, so I'll just drink this poison and then everyone's going to know. God's going to, I'll talk to you later, but I ain't talking to you for now. Right? And then God's supposed to go, oh, don't do that. Only thing that moves God is faith. You can cry your head off. You can harm your body. He's not going to be like, oh, I got to get off the throne, come save you right now. It doesn't work that way. He's given us a free will, and we can make choices, can't we? And then we get messed around. Like one of the people who hung themselves in the last couple of weeks here was on an upper and a downer at the same time. They weren't in addiction. Monster drink. The higher level monster drinks, and then mixing it with a downer, which was their medication. That'll put you in that state of mind, right? So we can go, but God took, he's 18. God took, did he? No. Sometimes we just, I just think of the times that I could have been in a car accident. I've never gotten a ticket. It's my goal to leave the earth without a ticket. Except it's not as big a deal because I'm fully aware I deserve a ticket. Now, if I had a better, thing where I could say, and there's no reason I would ever have received a ticket. But it's not that way. I'd be like, that was a ticket right there. I say that out loud sometimes. I'm like, that was a ticket. Well, thank you, Lord. There was no officers around. I will correct my behavior, Especially I was driving my 300 when I had that and praying. Well, that'll get you a ticket right now. The more I'm praying, it rides so smooth. Some cars are so smooth. You look down and you're going 80 miles an hour, and you're like, what happened? So sometimes we deserve something, right? But we receive grace from God, and we receive mercy. Grace is the free gift of his salvation and forgiveness. And then we choose to forgive those who have sinned against us. And sometimes we have to choose to forgive God. Has he done anything wrong? Nope, but we drank the poison. And it's killing us. It's hurting us. It's separating us from him. It's separating us from solving the problem. And then how long do you determine that you're going to last with poison in your system? Ever think about that? It's like, I've been poisoning myself for a while. I'm not going to forgive him. He should have never, right? So then how long are you going to last with that game before it totally destroys you? It's dangerous. It's dangerous. And I remember, because I went through molestation, rape, all kinds of different things as I was growing up. And I remember finding out about forgiveness. And I'm like, why would I forgive them? Because I really felt like if I forgive, then that person goes off scot-free. Right, Scott? Scot-free. I don't even know where that term came from. Why isn't it Dave-free? I don't know, but it's scot-free. And so they get away with it, and you're like, and somehow you feel like you were part of that because you forgave. Like, oh, now they got away with it. Well, see, so then we want to make sure we have the poison. Because the person needs to be punished, and I can't get at them, but I surely can get at myself. So we punish ourselves for, why was I with this abusive person? I need to punish me for their behavior about me. So there's things like that that we do. And then in the end, God gets the blame. So for those of you who just walked in, I'm just answering one of the parts of the question as to, when we get mad at God about some things. Anger just is the emotion that says, I want something to stop. So what is it that you really want to stop? I want the fear from PTSD to stop after that car accident. I'm still so hurt that it changed me. And I don't know who to be mad at. Maybe I should be mad at myself because I was in the car. I mean, we go through emotions that make sense at the time, but they don't make sense. Am I not right? Yeah. So, and then part of it is first we'll question ourselves and want to subtract things from ourselves, and then we'll want to punish ourselves. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to any more parties. I'm not doing this or whatever. I just got to stay home because I screwed too many things up. See, now we're acting out on ourselves. Now I'm not going to be in another relationship. I'm not doing this. I always pick the wrong person. I'm such a jerk. See, in the beginning stage of anger, when you get triggered and you already got all this pain we talked about last week, well, now you're going to flip up into a thing where it's like, well, I did that where I acted out on people, and it didn't change. I didn't feel any more healed. Just like you won't feel any more healed if you got poison in your system and you're angry at God. Right? I make a choice to be unforgiving. I'm drinking the poison. It isn't like, I'm not going to forgive you. Here, drink this poison. It doesn't work. There'll be a lot of people who do that, right? So we get triggered, we hit the pain, and that pain is the first emotion. It comes up and says, I really want something to stop. But many times we don't identify the real thing that we want stopped. The real thing we want stopped is how afraid we feel, how hurt we feel, the loss, the disorientation from not, sometimes you have a person, it's like my mom's visiting my sister. I'm her caretaker, right? So I have like a subconscious routine. This, and her coffee comes at that time, and then I go here, and I come back, and then I'm in the office typing, and then, and then she comes out the living room. I mean, it's all subconscious. And so for the last 2 days, I'm like lost in my house. I go to the door, and I'm like, oh, that's right, she's at Kim's. And then I go to do something. Oh, that's right, she's not here. See, so some of our losses would be, if she passed away, which one day she will, that pattern would have to change in my brain. So sometimes we don't like the lost feeling. Because a loss many times says, how do I reset myself? A suddenly would say, how do I reset myself? A sudden loss of someone, a relationship or whatever. It isn't like you get up the next day, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do. You'd have to go in some really intense denial, and most of us are good, but we're not that good, or some really intense disassociation. Well, I'm just not associating with the fact that I lost a relationship last night. I'm going to work. I'm going to build a blah, 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 or whatever. Like, we're just going to escape it. And some of us are good at taking the adrenaline of it and like just ripping the basement apart. We're going to gut the basement. That's what I'm going to do. You just broke up. So now you're going to gut okay, all right. And you're hauling stuff out, and you feel like, yeah, see, I'm planning moving on. And if this didn't work out, I might as well gut the basement. We're going to make new plans, and we're going to do that. But then as soon as you start to get tired, you're not that good at denial or dissociation. And so then that's when people will up the coffee, up whatever they got to do for uppers to keep going, because I gotta rip the bathroom out now. Or any other projects. Like, I knew a lady who went through grieving, and she scrapbooked like she'd be up till 3 o'clock in the morning scrapbooking. And you're just like, you need rest. And she's like, no, I have to complete this because my cousin, and she had all these reasons, because you're on the run from the emotions you're feeling. And the emotions are shocked, and you're hurt, and you're not able to reset yourself. Like, how do you go on from here? I don't know. Most of the time, people haven't been taught that. You were little kids, you went to a funeral, maybe it was an elderly person, you're like, oh, that's sad, whatever, what do they have to eat? Because you're not really as connected. or you're scared of the dead body laying up front or whatever, you're trying to understand it, and so you're not really connected. But then you will reach an age where it becomes like, that was my brother or my cousin or my best friend. I don't know how to reset myself. Because grief and loss is really outside of us. And we'll see that, oh, I'm sorry, you lost your whoever, or your car got broken into, or whatever. It's outside of us, and it's a story we tell other people. Hey, did you hear Sabrina's car was broken into? Yes, I hear about that. That's a lot going on now, with that happening. But it's outside of my circle. The closer it gets to you, the more violated you feel. Like, that's one of my church people. Who broke in your car? See, sometimes I feel violated on someone else's behalf. Like, I'm messing around. What neighborhood would you in? And you start asking questions like that. But, if you just hear something on the news, yeah, I heard that, blah, and it can be something major, but it's outside of you. Once you move it in close, now there's going to be a lot of feelings. And those feelings will hit these feelings in your bucket of pain that you have not processed. And you think they're just laying around in there like, no big deal, they're just laying there. I had closure to that till what's happening now triggers this. And once this gets triggered, it grabs a hold of a bunch of things that look familiar to loss or betrayal or shunning or whatever it is that you went through. Now you're feeling it. And when you feel it, this can happen in 30 seconds. Just whoosh, it can come up. And you're like, your breathing changes. Some people, their neck gets red blotches on it. Their ears go red. It's kind of like you start pacing and walking different, because it's like you're trying to figure out why you went from here, the lid blew off, and you're already up here now. And you're like, I don't trust me right now. Yeah, I don't want to hurt myself or others right now. I don't want to do it. So there's something about having a perspective. This is why, in an overall thing, to have sequential thinking, right, means that I know 2 plus, there's a plus sign there, 2, and then there's an equal sign, equals 4. That's sequential. It's like, I have learned a pattern of how this works, and there's truth involved in it. The more trauma we have as a child, the more those traumas never finish the sequence, never put a period at the X or an exclamation at the end of the sentence. It's like 2 something, I don't know if they're adding, what are we doing? Somehow it came out to 7. I don't know, that's how I grew up. And it's like a lot of confusion, a lot of anger and hurt. And so that's all in here. And if something triggers it, and something can be a positive thing can trigger that. You know that people who've gone through a lot of loss can get up and leave a wedding? Because it will trigger their losses when someone's gaining a relationship. And they're just like, I can't be here right now. And they'll just get up and leave. And like ladies will be mad about, like, she looks too pretty in that dress, and I never got to have, and it'll just start coming up. Any of the losses, and then we don't know what to do it, which means we don't know how to celebrate with other people. So we're always in a negative mode. We're mad at God, mad at ourselves, mad at others. Well, the only way you can move on to a better plan is to figure out how to resolve the anger in those 3 zones. So there has to be forgiveness. For yourself and for others. Well, who's going to do that? Well, that's what I'm waiting for. God needs to do that. He needs to make me feel so forgiven. He needs to make me, no, it's all a choice. Remember, I could choose to kick her or love her. I can choose to forgive or be in unforgiveness. So what happens also is when we don't have sequential thinking, something tragic happens, we can't process it, then we don't know how to bring it to closure. We're being chased. It's like the Pac-Man effect. And it's, all you hear is wah, wah, wah in your head, and you're trying to bring that thing to closure, and there's not enough information there to do that. Then you'll hang on to that. And however shock and awed you were, like, if it's a suddenly that was really sudden and it was intense, PTSD sets in a way where The soul is trying to see things ahead of time before they happen. So a lot of times people will say, well, that's my PTSD. Well, I never like calling anything mine that's actually from the devil's kingdom, right? If you suffer bipolar, that's more the accurate term. I'm suffering bipolar, but it's not my bipolar, right? It's something that happened to the body, and it's not of our Father's kingdom. It's a weakness in the body that needs to be healed or whatever it is. So when we have those things and we take ownership of it, and we're mad that we were hurt, but we're also afraid whatever caused that first thing is going to happen again. And so PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, which means sometimes people will say, I've been in crowds of people before, I'm not going in the sanctuary. No, I'm not even taking a chance at that. I feel like I can't breathe. I was one of those people. That's how I know. And so then I'd come in and I'd sit down, and then I'd go out. And then I'd come in and I'd sit down and I'd go out because I was uptight. Because my training was something's coming. I know it is. Well, what is it? I don't know. Because I didn't know the first time this suddenly happened. How would I know now? So you usually don't develop PTSD when your 94-year-old grandpa dies. Because everybody knew he was aging, it was going to happen, and you're like, yeah, that really sucks. And you have those kinds of feelings, and I wish it didn't go down that way in this world, but that's how it goes. We have to drop this earth suit to get out of it to go to heaven, right? And so that's not where we usually, it's the suddenly, a sudden loss, a sudden slap in the face, a sudden betrayal. Betrayal is intense because really that means you trusted on something and then you found out you were lied to. So, how many of you have your car parked outside right now? Okay, so have you been thinking about your car all night? Anybody having PTSD about the car? I left it out there. Well, if your car was stolen before, you might get up and peek out there to make sure it's still there. But there is an absolute violating betrayal feeling if you walk out that door and you know where you parked your car and it's not there. That feeling where your brain starts going, well, no, this is where I parked here, right? And you'll put yourself in question, and there's this whole thing. It's so violating when that type of stuff happens. It'll be days later, you're like, I still can't believe they took my car. It was right, I locked it too. And then you'll have to rehearse, all of us rehearse, how did they get in? What did they do to get the car? How come we didn't hear it? Why wouldn't the neighbors say anything? Where were the police when we need them? See how we start to expand it out? Because we feel violated. And you'll do the same thing with any form of loss. You'll start to do the questioning, and it'll start to be like, well, where were they? And how come so-and-so didn't come to the funeral? And why weren't they there to support? They should know. I mean, they've had years of counseling. And I mean, we'll just start over-analyzing everybody in the situation. And that's the brain trying to figure out, how can I prevent the pain from happening the same way again next time? Because this was a suddenly. I don't know when a suddenly is going to happen again. How would it happen? I don't know. How many of you have had suddenlies in your life that it's just and even when you share it with other people, they're like, what? When did that happen? Because they too if they have any empathy, they'll put themselves in your spot, and they're shocked. Not the same as what you experienced, but they're shocked, what? Why? Right? So the brain will start doing that. So we need to understand how we operate. So as soon as we question, this triggers our pain, and we start questioning like crazy because we want something to stop. But usually we'll grab something that is not the thing, and we think that's what we want stopped. When really it's how scared we are is what we want to stop. Right? Or how sad we are. I'm tired of feeling this way. Or how upset, and the feeling and the fear of abandonment. All of those different things are the first emotion. then we just get ticked. We'll start, I don't see why this should, people should be arrested and taking my car coming around here. I'm not coming to this church anymore. If I'd have known parking out here, I was going to get my car stolen. I mean, shouldn't the pastor have said something? See then? And everyone's like, wow, they're really mad about the car being stolen. Well, cars are a thing, and they cost us something, so it is very annoying if you lose that. But at the same time, we're just feeling that violated, and it'll trigger any feelings of any other time you never felt heard. You never felt protected. I don't care if it was third grade on the playground. I'm always getting stuff taken from me. See, these will be the things that'll start coming out. Because those are the things that never got resolved. When it comes down to it, this whole world's going to burn one day and start over. It's just every kind of metal, some gasoline, maybe a couple of your favorite books in there, whatever, it's gone. You got to be able to find a way to process that and start over. But if you stay mad at yourself, mad at the people, or mad at God, everything stops. There has to be a release through forgiveness. Or you're walking around with the poison. And anytime your brain says why, you're like, I don't know. Right? And sometimes we'll add to it by going drinking or doing something like that. We're like, I'm just so mad this happened because I'm so sad that it happened. And I don't know how to ground myself or reset myself. I don't know how to start the day over. It's kind of what we're really saying. Or the year, or the week, or the life. And then once that poison enters, it's in you. It's going to have an effect on you. It's going to mess with your thinking. You're not going to see clearly. And we say some really wild stuff because we're very, very angry because we're holding on to unforgiveness. Now, then that makes us right here where the seat of God is, we don't feel right. We're hurt by the incident or whatever it was, but we also don't feel right and we don't feel clean. It makes you feel dirty when you're in unforgiveness. I had one lady tell me that when she's driving a vehicle or something like that, sometimes she'll look up because she knows she's mad at God and she thinks he's feeling the same thing toward her. So she don't know, any moment, car's going to go in the ditch, she'll die, something like that. Her number might be up. I didn't know we had a number. It's more like we finished our destiny or we got taken out early. That's how it works. So there's something about PTSD that lies in here, or panic disorder. It's the trembling of like, I've been here before. I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling. I hate it. That'll blow this lid off, and then now I'm ticked. And I can't trust myself when I'm angry. That's when you stub your toe, you slam your hand in something, things like, because you're mad. And the adrenaline is there, and it makes you like you're half drunk. Your pupils get really tiny. You start focusing on certain things. Adrenaline will cause that. It'll cause you to zero in. So that's where, people have asked me, aren't you worried about ministering over, we used to go down in Denver and minister on the streets or whatever. Aren't you worried about that crazy guy over there yelling at the street corner? Nope, not worried about him at all. Because he's explaining exactly what's inside of him. So he's very predictable. The person you get concerned about is the one who's focused. And their eyes don't blink much, and they're staring at you. And they are of no affect. That's the person who's dangerous. Right? Right? But the guy who's like, I don't know, and he's yelling or whatever, you're like, yeah, you're losing it right now. You lost your mind. We'll help you find it. Give you a break. Gather it back. You'll be all right. Yes? Yeah, when I went into that house where there was fighting, I ended up telling them to be quiet and sit down, right? That was a little bit different situation, but at the same time, I tried to follow that, but you could hear what was going on. You ever be in a big fight or something like that, and then somebody comes in, you think you're so smooth. You're like, smooth operator, and you're not. They can see, that your eyes are swollen from crying or, your hair's messy or something because you're yelling, but you think you're incognito. No, people can feel that. And so these people were definitely off the charts. And so there was no fear going in because they're very predictable. It's the person who's real quiet and goes, yeah. And you can tell them something very scary, sad, or whatever, no affect. You're like, that's a dangerous person. So PTSD now, let's jump back into that. I want to talk about that a little bit. Or panic disorder is an actual physical change in the body from triggering these things too many times. And then we put a lid on it, and we're like, I can't keep re-experiencing this. Well, the problem is, whatever you had in here, there's so many things that have happened. Now you can't pick the thing you're panicking about. And sometimes, here's the physiological part of it, like panic disorder, you have two little glands on your kidneys. They're just tiny little glands that can make a grandma lift a car off of somebody, right? The adrenal glands. It's pretty amazing stuff. And so when you when you look at the effect that can have on the body and the changes that it will take place when that's triggered, it's wild, right? So what happens is you'll get that training of like, I feel like it's going to happen again. Like one lady who ran over a dog. After that, she had PTSD. Every bump in the road, she'd get out and her breathing would change, her face would get flushed, whatever, because she just knew she ran over another dog, right? So she would have the adrenal glands go off to the point like she's lifting a car off of somebody. But she just hit a bump. And what happens is those adrenal glands sitting right there on your kidneys, that what they want to do is come out when a bear jumps out in front of you. They want to operate then. They were like, we need to get you moving, right? But what'll happen after a while when we've had a lot of trauma or things have taken place, we have it go off like a bear's chasing you, but there ain't no bear there. I used to have panic disorder with everything that I was through. And I remember trying to sort out my bucket of pain, and I started having a panic attack. You can't pick up people that are, what's wrong? You're like, I don't know, right? But your body, I can't breathe. Your face will get flushed, your mouth will go dry, your hands will get sweaty, and you're just like, you feel like you're having a heart attack? Well, pick the number one thing that's bothering you right now. I don't know. It'll jump through everything. It's jumping off of all of this stuff that was not resolved. You clean this out, even when the adrenals go off, you realize this is just a physical reaction. You breathe your way through it and take yourself right down off of it. But if we haven't resolved the deaths in our life, the losses, the betrayals, those types of things, they culminate. What fires together, wires together. Now you trigger that. It gets explosive, the adrenals go off, and you can just be walking down a street and your subconscious picked up all kinds of cue, and all of a sudden you can't breathe, and you don't know why. Well, your subconscious knows why. It knows about 100 reasons why. But nothing's coming to your frontal lobes. You're like, I don't know. And then you'll have a panic attack. And then guess what happens with panic attacks? If you don't understand that, a panic attack will cause you to panic about the panic attacks. Because you never know when the next one's coming. Anybody ever suffer that? Had a full load of groceries in the store. And I thought, I made it through. This is awesome. I was in Colorado. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, this is great. But I was edgy because I had panic attacks. I didn't fully understand it. You know, I'm in my 20s, and I'm like, what is happening? All the junk from when I was young caught up to me. Because now I'm sitting in the presence of God, and God's saying, let's deal with all that. So now I'm re-experiencing some of it because I'm in a safe place enough to do it. And so I started having a panic attack in the store. About what? I have no idea. I wasn't thinking about anything scary. But the adrenals, what they'll do is they're like, I think I'll go off right about now. And they just go off on their own after a while, and you can't get them to stop going off on their own. So then you'll end up in the ER, and they say, you're not having a heart attack. Right? But all the way there, you feel like you are. So sometimes PTSD is without panic disorder. That's just is there consuming feeling, consuming thoughts that happen with PTSD. You just know something's coming. What's coming? I don't know. right? So your mind's trying to predict something. You don't feel safe with your surroundings. You don't feel safe in your own body. And so you don't feel grounded at all. You feel like you're going to float. And sometimes you don't necessarily have PTSD. Sometimes people can get on a roller coaster and be laughing their head off and have a panic attack. Because you just set off your adrenal glands. But you set them off for a funny reason. Well, why am I having a panic attack? Because it's funny. Because you required something of the adrenals that they're like, oh, are we doing that thing? I remember just watching a commercial on TV and laughing, and boom, full-blown panic attack. I had to sit there and breathe. And if you suffer that at all, one of the things you can do physiologically, that's not spiritually, I pray, but my prayers used to sound real quick and edgy. And when I used to have them, after a while I learned to just talk real slow like this. You do opposite of your glands. Do opposite of the surroundings. And you breathe. And for some people, you get in a dark place. Some people go lay in a closet, close the door, and just through your nose. So when I used to pray, if I was having a panic attack, it sounded like this when I first started. God, I don't want this in Jesus' name. And you just cause yourself to panic more, So you're like panicking and you're having panic prayer, But after a while, I was like, whew, that was a rush. I would lay down, I'd close my eyes, shut off the lights, because any stimulation, it's stimulating in the body. Ever go to sleep? I've asked this question here before, but did you ever have a rough day or be at a concert? That's another one that'll do it. Lights flashing or whatever. And now you're in a pitch dark room in your bedroom, but you go to shut the light off, you shut it off, you lay in your bed, and your eyes are lit up. That's neurological. That's your body going, you are overstimulated. And you're like, I'm laying in bed, I'm not even doing anything. Yes, but you're overstimulated. And so it takes quite a while for those neurons to stop popping that so you don't have the lights in your head. Yes?
Okay, so for the PTSD, so what if someone just tells you you have that, like
Well, I could give you a test for it and, get all psychological and be like, yes, you sound like you have the effects of PTSD. I can do that, but at the same time, if a person has that, because your breathing changes, you have all the physiological things, and there's such a worry, it capsulates you, so you'll stop doing the normal things you normally would do.
So they said, she said that mine was automated to Parker when I was 30. Because they were born so clean. But I don't ever think I had that. Then she's like postpartum depression. I don't ever think I had any of that.
Yeah.
I've been a Christian since I've been 9, so I've always had that,
Like a faith to do that. It could just be physiological on top of it. When a person's hormones changes or you go through huge shifts, that can mess with the adrenals. And people have a panic attack and they're not even worried about anything. So that's why we don't go around throwing out labels like, that sounds narcissistic or you got PTSD or whatever. Because then everybody and their dog has it for sure. But at the same time, if you're feeling like I've actually stopped horseback riding and I don't like to be on motorcycles and you might not have full-blown PTSD where it's just like I can't go anywhere and do anything, but you're riding the edge of it. You're entertaining just escaping, right? So then it trains the body to go there. That's what we don't want to do. We don't want to have the body trained to do this. But once it is, from a suddenly, like a bam, if I hit this board really hard, boom, that would be so suddenly. It's that shocking feeling. And we record everything through our 5 senses. You've heard me say that before, right? So you got your 5 senses we're recording through, so that's sight and hearing and touch, all the 5 senses. So if you were in a car accident, it isn't like your recorder goes, maybe it's on a 4, this light music, and also, bam, somebody hits you, and you're just recording that as your head's hitting up against the glass. And no, it doesn't work that way. All of a sudden, the volume of how you record the situation goes super, super loud. It's like, And it's some of it's interpretation. Like, for instance, if you're a person who races dirt bikes, right? How many people, if you know people who race dirt bikes, have broken ribs and broken whatevers if they're really into racing dirt bikes? It's just how it is. It's like, well, cracked my rib or whatever. But they're so trained in it that they don't have the high adrenaline. Like, I don't know if I can get back on. They're like, yeah, just put a Band-Aid on it, let's go. Because they're trained in that. But if I just put you on a motorcycle and said, race that guy, and you broke your arm, the way you would record that without any of that training would be like, like sucking the air out of the room. That's why when we compare ourselves amongst ourselves, it's not wise, the Bible says. Because your experience or your training might opt you out of the more heavily intense trauma. Right? If you had a loss of a parent or something when you were 5, it sets you up to have more of a huge perspective of loss when your grandma dies at 95. Because you're like, because you recorded those things as a huge recording. They were loud. So now your processor, anything happens now, we're processing loud. Yeah? When I did daycare for years, there was always some kids that had like tubes in their ears or whatever. But before they would get that, they had a lot of ear infections. And so they'd come in the room like, hi, Mary. You're like, whoa, volume is really loud. But it wasn't loud to them because their ears were plugged, and they're like, yeah, we're going to play outside. And the other kid's like, okay, calm down, because they got fluid in their ears and things like that. Well, it's like that, their perspective, I'm just talking normal. So your body after a while will be like, I'm just feeling normal. I don't know what's up with you guys. Why are you reacting to me like that? I'm just trying to tell you something, And that's how it feels because you recorded it loud. So now, but these are the things that are painful that we want to stop. And remember I said last week, if it passes this, which can happen in seconds for people who don't have training on how to hold it more at a 1, you'll go from 1 to a 10. And then when you cross over the border, right? If you don't have a good boundary for yourself here, if you don't have a wall built on this border, you're crossing over here pretty illegally. And when you do it, you're out of control. Right? You'll say and do things to yourself and others that you're like, I'm embarrassed. I'm shocked. Right? So here's where the police will come. I'm arresting your rage. Get in the car. Right? All right. And so then you're sitting in a jail cell, your lawyer or whoever shows up or whatever. Well, we're dealing with your rage. You got a rage problem. You really need to. Well, there's a class for that. Right? It's called anger management. You didn't manage your anger. Well, that's really nice. But if you don't understand where the pain came from, we're going to return here. You're not that good at white knuckling. And now they've proven, and I've always thought this anyway, because we used to have a boxing we used to wear boxing gloves and box each other and all kinds of stuff when I was growing up. And you'd have the boxing bag hanging there. And I remember just being so mad and just nailing it. And it felt so good. And then we started to believe, well, see, that's how you get the anger out. You take a pillow and you hit it and you do all that's not what science proves. You're actually training your body to go through this whole process and act it out. It felt good, but then I started looking forward to times where I could pop something. And I was mad all the time, and I just needed to pop somebody. I mean, that's how it felt. So it's not a good thing because then there's no border patrol here. And whatever happens on this side, very bad. Yes? A drum? Yeah, well, adrenaline, right? Have you experienced panic attacks or anything like that? Yeah. So you have to kind of look, I got drummers in the family, and you have to look at how much exposure, like, here's one where it could be a bad setup for you. You didn't eat supper, but there's a practice for your band or something like that, so you'll just get there and drink a Monster drink before, keep yourself going. You light up the caffeine, your adrenaline glands, which are probably depleted, and which they call adrenaline fatigue. So you're asking them to do something, they don't really have anything left to do that thing. And yet, here we are, And now just the sound of the drums is lighting up your neurological system. You would be that person who lays there in bed and sees the lights, right? And so you have to retrain your body. Not that you can ever be a drummer, especially if you sat behind the drums and you were acting out your anger on the drums. It's really bad for the heads, just let you know that. And some of the sticks get broken and things like that. But back to you, you'll wreck your drum set. But there is this thing of like, you know, and especially you got the double kick, you know, and all that. And you're going, it's like, I'm letting this out. I'm like, but are you? Are you resolving it? No. You're just trying to get the adrenaline out. So what we're doing is we're acting out the adrenaline until finally our body just goes, I can't do this anymore. And you come down off of it and you're like, oh. I'll even be more brazen about it because I'm that chick. A lot of people look at porn and sexually act out because it's one of those things where it's like, I can't control what, you know. And it's not a sexual thing as much as I have to have some form of release. I can't bring myself back down. Well, you train your body to cross the border in that way, you're going to eventually sexually act out on somebody. That's what's going to happen. And is it a sexual issue? No, it's an anger issue. And is it an anger issue? No, it's a hurt issue. Yeah, I just went there. Mm-hmm. Okay, back to the Bible. No. So, and here, you know why I like reading how David handled certain things? David was a warrior. Amen. Right? When they walked through, they said, Saul killed 1,000. David, tens of thousands. That's why Saul was so ticked at him, because they were switching over their honor to him. They knew he was king. He was a warrior. Well, how do you be a warrior and not just just beheading everybody? When he went to war, he did his job. When he came home, he's not supposed to be killing everybody, right? But that's that thing. Sometimes if you're ex-military, right, the only way that you can do this is through the protocol. That's rough stuff, isn't it? Now we have to switch it to, hey, there has to be a border patrol that says, I can't go past a 10. And even at a 10, you can hurt yourself and others. I had a young lady in my foster home years and years ago, and I had just put a beautiful dresser in her room with a mirror. And she was looking at herself in the mirror. She was like 8 years old. And she just hit the mirror as hard as she could over and over. And I could hear the smashing. And the glass was stuck in her hands and her knuckles, and it was totally shattered. And I was like, and then, this is so many years ago, this is when I didn't have this information. I'm looking at her thinking, why are you so calm now? Because she had so much training of this from sexual abuse and everything that she knew the answer wasn't going to come. So she had to just get the adrenaline out somehow and exhaust herself. So that's how she chose to do it. And pain will cause you to just go, whoa, okay, hold on, hold on. And then she just felt so good. She's like, yeah, you need to fix this, Mary. So picked a piece of the glass out or whatever. But she was very calm. And I thought that doesn't match, you know. It's not matching the behavior. But she felt like she had such a release from hurting herself. People who cut have that same thing. Like I'm leaving my body, I can't control this or whatever, and they'll cut and they're like, okay, I'm back. PTSD can take you to that level where you feel like you need to do something, right? But it's a misdirection of your anger. What it says is, I actually don't have the skill to work through this. I didn't work through those other things. How would I work through this now? Do you see that? So God comes into your life. I'm believing that, right? God comes into our life. Why do we need God? Because he is love. And you have no standard but yourself. I'm not talking about religion comes in your life. That just gets goofy. And now you're mad at religion on top of it, and somebody's going to control somebody, and that's how religion works. I'm talking about a relationship with God, right? So you can relate to him. There's something about relating to him is like, oh, he wouldn't handle it like this. Well, how would he handle it? I don't know. Well, let's find out. Where religion will say this, don't do that. There, I told him. Katie, be good. okay. I guess I got to be good. Pastor said so. You see, it doesn't work. There's a heart change that needs to happen right in here. A heart change needs to happen. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to keep running this program. Now, what we've said before, and I don't have my pen here, we want something to stop, it doesn't, and we run this program a few times, maybe end up in jail or wreck our car or whatever we're doing. Then we'll come out over here and go, I got to put the lid on this. I don't know how to resolve this. But I know if I self-medicate, I can change the subject. I can change how I feel if I just get drunk. Okay, yeah, now I don't have to think about this as much. But you still didn't resolve it. So now you're going to have to stay drunk all the time. Well, that's my plan. Stay drunk all the time if I have to. Right? Because it works for me. Just repeating things that have been said to me. Or just, pot just helps me to relax. Yeah, and it causes such a dysphoria in the brain that it will cause you to hallucinate about these different things, and you still won't handle it. I know. And you never want to add meth to that. Holy cow. What you're saying is, I really want to come up into the rage, into that area of power, so I can be bigger than this. Like kids in a preschool, when they're scared, they'll pretend to be a dinosaur. Suddenly they're like, rah, and you're like, okay, Jimmy, it's okay. You got to get down to their level and talk to them, because there's something going on where they feel like they have to be bigger than the other kids. Right? They usually don't pretend to be a mouse at that point. It needs to be something big or loud, or I'm a bear, raw, And okay, something's scaring them, something's hurting them, something happened at home or on the way in the car, and they don't know what to do with it, so they're announcing it to all their friends like, no one here can hurt me, I'm a bear. Okay? See? So we do that as adults by medicating with things that make us feel bigger than life. And for that 3-4 days, sometimes 2 weeks, while we're still trying to come down, we are powerful sexually, we're powerful in our thought patterns, everything is so fast. And we think we're amazing, and people looking in are like, oh my gosh, what do we got going on? Get out the car, you shouldn't be driving, you know what I mean? But depends on, you're trying to, self-medication says, I'm choosing the route of saying, shh, silencia. I do not want to hear from you. That's all forms of downers. Then all forms of uppers are like, oh yeah, bring it on. I want to hear from you. I'm not scared of you anymore. I'm bigger than life. I can drive 100 miles an hour down the road. Cops chasing me. Yeah, they ain't going to get me. I'm me. Well, good for you, me. Right? But that's the thing. It's going to do that. So we can go self-medications. I said no to rage. Hey, stop being so angry. All of that. Don't trigger me. Don't stay away. You could trigger me. You don't know who I am. Okay, the problem is right here. And it's in the heart and in the mind. So this is the conundrum. When people realize that you see yourself, you're like, that is way too much time and information being taken up in my brain. This whole thing takes up so much space, time, and energy. I can't do this, and then we'll go into depression. You only stay in depression so long, and then you're going to self-medicate. And during this process, we're ruining relationships, we're ruining jobs, and really at the heart of it is not a bad person, it's pain. The first thing that has to be removed from all these things to close them is poison. Did you take the pill? Are you drinking the Kool-Aid? That's it. You hurt me. Okay. And they're like, have a nice day. And they walk off and you're like dying. Unforgiveness does that. It's a trick.
So did you talk about Arrested Development during this part at all?
No, I was going to do that, but I'm going to hand out sheets this coming week. And I think it'll be good because you should take notes.
So my question is then, I have anger, huge anger
Your past experiences.
The last
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't have like, I don't feel like I was ever arrested in that any area, but like where does that huge anger come from?
Well, here's the thing. You might not be arrested where the wound was really young, but you might be arrested in your skill of how you're going to handle the wound, right? So if you got something that a newborn needs, what's their skill? Cry. Wah. You know, and they'll start out like, it usually starts that low roar, like you just started up a Harley. It's just a low little, and then all of a sudden it'll go to higher. But once they are like, I need you to come and give me that bottle or breastfeed me or whatever it is now, it's a different sound. There is like a level of like, whoa, this little person is letting us know, right? Then you move up and how you would handle a situation where you're in pain when you're 2. That's going to look totally different again. Mine, stop, no, you know, raptor stuff where you're laying on the floor and kicking and doing all this kind of stuff. Well, adults do that. They're arrested in development in that area. They'll do that. Punching holes in the walls are usually between 3 and 5. So,
So you can have arrested at like a 30-year-old.
well, most of your skill is developed between 26 and 30 years old. It takes to get the main foundational pathways in your brain. Then you pull from that skill and use it, right? So if somebody made you mad because you got hurt and you were wounded and you didn't feel, you have to identify, did I feel heard by all these men that you're talking about, right? Is that the area of pain? Like, no one ever listens to me. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, and what age are you acting? You know, a 40-year-old might say, you know, I just never felt heard. And it really hurts me, and, you know. But a 5-year-old would be like, nobody's listening. And then they break something. That's where chicks throw dishes. There's 2 things I don't like about that. You have to clean it up, and then you got to replace them. So it's money and time, and I don't want to waste that. So I got to find something different, right? Corelware. There we go. She must have thrown it. So guys will usually do something like take off in their truck really fast and, you know, peel out, you know, do something that's going to let everybody know you're really angry or whatever. Is that an adult behavior?
Well, it's just rehashing the same thing because the person's not getting it.
Correct. But an adult does not do the thing where you peel out of the yard. What age group would do that?
Teenager, 18-year-old.
Even younger, 7, 8. See, 7, 8-year-olds are that age where you're at the playground. You're like, Mom, look at me, Mom. Look, I can do it. Mom, 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 Mom. Grandma, you know. And because they want to be seen. And so if you have to be seen all the time and you're not heard, you're going to act out. And that's where the big threats come from. Big threats is arrested in development. That's like you're on the playground, right? And what age group goes, I'm never playing with you again. You're not my friend. I hate you. And they'll take it to these really high levels. And 2 hours later, they're calling like, can we play video games? So it's irrational behavior, but it's arrested in development at a very young age. So we'll go over that sheet this coming week. But so here we are identifying yet, where am I at? So if you've come up in here, PTSD lies in here. Panic disorder lies in here. Unforgiveness is here toward yourself, others, or God. And you're not going to be able to solve this and get this under control unless we deal with the forgiveness aspect. Does that make sense? Yes. So I remember saying this line, and a lot of people say that, but I'm not ready to forgive yet. What does ready look like? What you got to have? How much more poison you want to drink? These are all questions just to ask. You're like, nah, I think I'm going to be on poison for another couple weeks anyway. Really want to hurt myself a little bit more. Ever think of that? And if we think it's going to move God for him to be so merciful now that we're so mad at him because he screwed up and look, I'm sorry, don't hurt yourself. I'll change. That's not God. There's no sin in him. What would be the point of serving a God that had sin operating in him? Then he's no better than us. right? He's holy. That's why Holy Spirit. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed means holy is thy name. Even his name is so different than this earth. Now, you can call me Mary, and I can be Mary one way today, but tomorrow, not so much. If I let my flesh just go, I'm the same Mary, right? But God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he is good, the Bible says. Father is good, right? So because we change and we flux, we think he's going to. Why would I serve a God that's no more powerful than me? These are all things to think about. And the other thing is, I'd find the poison bottle. We need to figure that part out. So let's stand. I think, I don't want to talk at you. I want to talk to you. And so this is kind of a big deal, this unforgiveness thing that's right here. Sometimes we'll go through a round of forgiving people, and we think, got it. Yeah, I forgave them all on every level. Well, the problem is you've been hurt on so many levels, see? That you think when you grab the first stuff, you're like, got it, I'm good. It isn't that you didn't forgive them. It's just something else will come up that needs to be cleared up. And you just make the choice again, yeah, and I choose to forgive them. Remember, Lord, I told you I forgive them? That thought that just came up, it was a choice for me to forgive. And the word forgive means a great sending away. Wouldn't it be great to just get a load off and just be like, send that away. Get off me. You still have the memory, but the power of sin that sits on unforgiveness is huge. It's the thing that actually blocks us from getting to the Father. We got all kinds of other things, but the thing that blocks us is unforgiveness. Either your sins aren't forgiven or you have it toward other people. Should we clear that up here tonight? Amen. We shall. All right? Well, what we're doing is starting a process of learning how to just make the choice. But when you're used to drinking the poison, you're going to think that's too simple. We just prayed a prayer. No, it has to be harder. There has to be some kind of punishment. No. He's faithful and just to forgive those, right, who sin. He's faithful and just to forgive us. All right. So just repeat after me if you want in on this prayer. Dear Jesus, I ask forgiveness for my sin. Forever I went wrong or I participated. I also ask, Lord, and I choose to forgive those who have sinned against us. Lord, we thank you for forgiveness and a great sending away. But not to make it less, but to address our unforgiveness toward you. I'm sorry, Lord. I've held things against you. Show me who you are. Forgive me in that way. In Jesus' name. Amen. So we clear those areas up. It makes a path for God to show up in our life. It changes everything. The blood of Jesus addresses that. That's why he died on the cross. Okay, so it starts to clear it up, but you got to now sort out the memories and unpack these things and put them away where they belong. So if you're suffering PTSD, something hasn't been unpacked. If you were grieving when you came in here, we need to unpack some things. Some of the stuff you're carrying doesn't even belong to you. Somebody put something in your luggage, it's like, I've been traveling around with this. These are not my underwear. You know what I mean? It's like, there's something about it. It's like, well, we got to get that gone. That's not mine. Get that out of here. So you are blessed and highly favored and loved by God. I want you to hear that. Sometimes we just need to be told and reminded. Have a good week.